The narrator says that his daughter Minnie, who is 5 years old, could not live without speaking. One morning when the narrator was writing the 17th chapter of his new novel, she came in and putting her hand into his and asked many questions. "Father, Ram Dayal, the doorkeeper, calls a crow a crow. He doesn't know anything, does he? Father, what relation is mother to you?" Before the speaker could answer any of these, she sat at his feet and began drumming her knees. She suddenly ran to the window and shouted, "Oh Kabuliwala! Oh Kabuliwala!" She started to call him loudly. He was in the street. He looked up and saw Minnie. But Minnie fled to her mother's protection and disappeared. She had a blind belief that inside the bag of the Kabuliwala were perhaps 2 or 3 children like herself. The peddler entered the doorway and smiled. The narrator bought a few things and they talked about Abdur Rahman, the Russians, the English, and the frontier policy. Before leaving, he said, "And where is the little girl, sir?" The narrator wanted Minnie to get rid of her false fear, and he had her brought out. She stood close to his chair and looked at the Kabuliwala and his bag. She refused to take the nuts and raisins he offered. This was their first meeting. One morning, a few days later, the narrator was surprised to see Minnie seated on a bench near the door, laughing and talking with the great Kabuliwala sitting at her feet. The corner of her little sari was stuffed with almonds and raisins. She had never found a patient listener like him, save her father. Now Minnie and Kabuliwala became great friends. The Kabuliwala had overcome the child's fear by giving nuts and almonds. They would often share quaint jokes. He would ask her, "Well, little one, and when are you going to your father-in-law's house?" She would ask, "Are you going there?" Among the men of Kabuliwala's class, father-in-law's house meant the jail. Minnie and Kabuliwala spent much time together. Kabuliwala would always find time to come and meet Minnie. One morning there was an uproar in the street, and looking out, the narrator saw Rahman being led away by 2 policemen. Minnie shouted, "Oh Kabuliwala, are you going to the father-in-law's house?" Kabuliwala's face lit up and he said, "Just where I am going, little one." He was sentenced to some years' imprisonment. Years went by. It was autumn, and Minnie was to be married that night, and the preparations were in full swing. The narrator was in the study when someone entered and saluted him respectfully. The narrator could not recognize him, but when he smiled, the narrator knew him again. He had brought a few almonds, raisins, and grapes wrapped in a paper. He had been released from jail the previous day and had come to see Minnie. The narrator told him that it was not possible to meet anyone because all were busy with the ceremonies. The narrator was about to pay him, but he said, "You have a little girl. I too have one like her in my home. I think of her and bring fruits for your child." He took out a small and dirty piece of paper and unfolded it on the table. It bore the impression of a little ink-smeared hand. This touch of his own little daughter he always carried with him as he came to Calcutta to sell his wares every year. Tears came to narrator's eyes. The narrator realized that he was also a father separated from his dear little daughter. The narrator sent for Minnie. She was clad in red silk with sandal paste on her forehead, adorned as a bride. Kabuliwala had imagined her to be the same little girl who would come running to him. He said, "Little one, are you going to your father-in-law's house?" Minnie flushed up at the question and turned down her face. After she left, Rahman sat on the floor. He suddenly realized that his daughter too must have grown up. He would have to make friends with her anew. The speaker took out a banknote and gave it to him. The speaker told him to go back to his country and meet his daughter.